You held the frame. You stayed unmoved. And then something shifts. She stops testing. She stops pulling away. Her texts change. Her voice softens. She asks what you need from her. She tells you she sees you. Every instinct screams, "You've won." The pressure lifts. The tension dissolves. That knot in your chest loosens. You think this is the moment you can finally relax. That relief is the moment of collapse. Most men hold frame during her spiral, but the moment she surrenders, that's when they crumble. Not because they're weak, but because surrender looks like victory, and victory feels like permission to stop being vigilant. The hardest test isn't her distance, it's her warmth. The hardest frame to hold isn't when she's spiraling, it's when she's surrendered. Because when she finally gives you what you wanted, every fiber of your being wants to give it all back. You want to explain, justify, reassure, chase, prove you're not cold. And in that moment, you hand her everything you built. It's not one mistake, it's a cascade. 5 breaks in sequence, each small, each harmless alone. But together, they dismantle everything. That's the fatal error. Not that you broke once, but that you broke the moment she stopped breaking you. The collapse is gradual, a series of small surrenders that compound into total loss of frame. Each feels justified, each is a signal, and she's reading every one. Here's how it unfolds. She's asking real questions now. What do you need from me? How can I be better? These feel different, vulnerable, and you feel the urge to explain. So you do. You explain your silence. You justify your strategy. You think you're being honest. But here's what you signaled: your silence was a strategy. Your unmoved state was a tactic. Real stillness doesn't need justification. When you defend your actions, you reveal they were actions, not nature. She loses attraction not because you explained, but because you revealed there was something to explain. Your unmoved state was conditional, calculated, controllable. She's warm now, invested, texting first, making plans. Everything you wanted is now freely given, so you match her energy. You text more, call more, initiate plans. You're available, present, eager. You think this is reciprocity, but here's what you signaled. Your unmoved state was waiting for her to return. Your stillness was contingent on her distance. The moment she came closer, you revealed you were always ready to chase. She sees a man who is always uncomfortable, a man whose restraint was effort, not essence. Real self-possession doesn't shift with her investment, but you did. You revealed your pace was dependent on hers, and dependence is the death of attraction. She's testing again, subtly. Do you still love me? Are we okay? She's confused because your energy shifted, so you provide constant reassurance. Of course I love you. We're more than okay. You respond to every test with validation. But then you start seeking her approval, asking if she's happy, checking if you're doing enough. Are you okay? Do you need anything? You think you're being attentive, but here's what you signaled. You need her validation to feel secure. Your sense of self is dependent on her approval. You're no longer the anchor. You're the boat. The man who was unmoved by her spiral is now moved by her every mood. She doesn't consciously lose respect. It just happens, because respect is a reaction to observing strength or weakness, and what she's observing is weakness dressed as care. She has a moment of doubt, fear, insecurity, and you rush to fix it. Don't worry, you're overthinking. You spend hours calming her down. You change your plans. You bend your frame to fit her emotional state. You cancel your gym because she needs to talk. You skip your deadline because she's upset. You abandon your boundaries because maintaining them might make her uncomfortable. You think you're being a good partner, but here's what you signaled. You will sacrifice your frame for her comfort. Your stillness, your mission, your self-possession, all secondary to managing her emotional state. She's back in control. Not because she took it, but because you handed it back. She didn't want it. She wanted to orbit yours. But now you're dancing on her strings again. Reactive, managed, controlled by her moods. The frame collapses under the weight of her emotions. You're no longer the anchor. You're the sail, blown by her every wind. She's fully back in control now. You handed it back, piece by piece, break by break. Your life revolves around hers. You compromise on things that matter. Your time, your space, your mission, your boundaries. She wants to see you Tuesday, you cancel your plans. She needs you to skip your morning routine, you skip it. She's uncomfortable with you alone, you stop. Your frame is gone. You think you're building intimacy, but here's what you signaled. You're not a man with a life. You're a man with a woman. Your identity is defined by the relationship. Your priorities are dictated by her needs. Your sense of self dissolves into her orbit. She doesn't see a partner. She sees a satellite. Satellites don't lead. They follow. They orbit. They depend on the gravity of something else. The man who was unmoved is now desperate to keep her. The man who held frame is now afraid to lose her. Your frame wasn't real. It was performance, and performances end. Men don't break from pressure. They break from the absence of pressure. It's biology, psychology, and wounding colliding at the exact moment you think you're safe. When she's spiraling, distant, testing, you have a clear opponent. The pressure is external. You know what you're defending against. Your nervous system is activated, sharp, focused. You hold frame because the threat is obvious. But the moment she surrenders, the threat disappears. The pressure lifts. Your nervous system relaxes. And in that relaxation, you become vulnerable to something far more dangerous than her tests. Your own hunger. You've been starved for validation. Her distance, her tests, her spiral, all of it kept you in deprivation. You held frame, but underneath, you were dying for her approval. And the moment she gives it, you're intoxicated. That intoxication is what breaks you. Not her coldness, her warmth. Because warmth feels like reward. And when you've been starved, reward triggers overconsumption. You don't just accept her warmth, you gorge on it, you match it, amplify it, chase it. You become desperate to keep it. Your nervous system reads her surrender as, you finally have what you've been fighting for. Don't lose it. That's the trap. Victory doesn't feel like calmness. It feels like terror. Terror that you'll lose what you just won. So you grip tighter, explain more, reassure more, chase more, and in that gripping, you crush what you're trying to hold. Then there's the fear, the primal fear that if you don't match her investment, she'll leave. That if you stay unmoved, she'll think you don't care. So you overcorrect. Unmoved to overly available, silent to over-explaining, leading to following. Terrified that the frame you held will be the reason she leaves. She didn't surrender because you were warm. She surrendered because you were unmoved. The moment you become what she was chasing, you stop being what she wanted. There's another layer. Deeper. Uglier. Most men hold frame to get her validation. Not because they value stillness, but because they believe stillness is the strategy to win her approval. The frame is a means, not an end. So when she finally approves, mission accomplished. The frame is no longer needed. You drop it. Revert to who you were before. The chaser, the explainer, the man who orbits her gravity. You didn't change. You performed. Now the performance is over. That's why the collapse feels so natural, because it's not a collapse. It's a return to your baseline, to the man you've always been when the pressure's off. The wound beneath all of this? The belief that you're only valuable when you're chasing, that your worth is proven through pursuit, that if you're not fighting for her, you're not worthy of her. So when she stops requiring the fight, you create it. You start chasing again, because chasing is how you prove your value. Stillness feels like neglect. Self-possession feels like selfishness. The only way you know how to love is through sacrifice. That's the identity collapse. You were the unmoved man, but that identity was armor. Underneath, you're still the boy who believes love is earned through effort. That connection requires surrendering yourself. That intimacy means losing yourself in another. And the moment she gives you permission to relax, you stop being the man she wanted. You become the man you've always been, the one she didn't choose. You don't see what you see. You're inside the collapse thinking you're building connection. She's watching something else entirely. The confusion returns. She surrendered because you were different, unmoved, self-possessed. Not like every other man who bent to her moods. But now, you're explaining, chasing, seeking reassurance. You're just like the rest. She doesn't articulate this. She feels it. A creeping disappointment. The man she thought you were, gone. In his place is the man she's seen a dozen times before. The respect dies. Respect isn't something she decides to give or take. It's something she feels or doesn't. And now, the absence of it. Your strength was conditional. Your frame depended on her distance. The moment she came close, you revealed it was all strategy. She doesn't lose respect because you're warm. She loses it because your warmth proves your coldness was fake. That you were playing a game, and if you were playing a game, you can lose it. Real strength doesn't shift with her behavior. It remains constant, but yours didn't. So she learns you're not actually strong, you're just reactive, and reactive men are controllable. The attraction evaporates. She doesn't want to feel this way. She wants to stay invested, but attraction isn't negotiable. It's not something she controls. It's a reaction to observing value or its absence. What she's observing is desperation dressed as love, neediness dressed as care. A man terrified of losing her, sacrificing himself to keep her. That terror is repulsive, not because it's cruel, because it's weak. And weakness is the death of desire. She doesn't think this consciously. She just stops feeling the pull. The fire that burned when you were distant, it cools when you chase. The fever that kept you in her mind, it breaks when you explain yourself. The tests return, not because she wants to hurt you, because she's confused. She needs to figure out what's real. Is the unmoved man real or is the chasing man? She doesn't know anymore. So she tests, probes, pushes, and this time you fail every test. Because you're not holding frame anymore. You're managing her emotions, seeking her approval, explaining your actions. Each test reveals more weakness, and each failure compounds the loss of attraction. The cycle repeats, but worse. You're back to where you started. Her distant, you chasing. But now she knows something she didn't know before. She knows how to move you. She's seen the breaking point. She knows your stillness is conditional. Your frame is performance. So the dynamic becomes transactional. She pulls away, you chase. She tests, you fail. She spirals, you collapse. It's no longer a relationship. It's a power struggle. And power struggles don't end in connection. They end in exhaustion. The relationship becomes a game neither of you wants to play. You're both locked in. She can't respect a man who chases. You can't stop chasing a woman you fear losing. The end is inevitable. Not because she's cruel, not because you're weak, but because something fundamental has shifted. The foundation you built, your stillness, your frame, your unmoved state was the only reason she chose you. And the moment you dismantled it, you dismantled her reason to stay. She doesn't leave immediately. Sometimes it takes weeks, months, but the leaving has already happened. In her mind, in her heart, in the way she looks at you or doesn't. The rest is just timing. Holding frame when she's testing is easy. Holding frame when she's surrendered is the real test. Because when she's distant, you have something to defend against. But when she's warm, you're defending against yourself, your hunger, your fear, your desperate need to prove you're not the cold, distant man you appeared to be. That's the real mastery. Not staying unmoved when she's spiraling, but staying unmoved when she's surrendered. Not cold, not distant, not punishing her for getting close, but warm and unmoved, present and self-possessed, connected but not consumed. Here's what that looks like. You lead, you don't chase. When she's warm, you don't match her energy, you maintain your pace. You respond, but you don't over-pursue. Your life continues, your mission remains. She orbits your gravity. You don't orbit hers. You stay warm, but you don't break frame. Affectionate, but not desperate. Available, but not constant. You care, but your care doesn't require sacrificing your boundaries. You love her, but you don't lose yourself. You don't When she asks why you were distant, you don't walk her through your strategy. You just say, I needed space. I'm here now. That's enough. Real strength doesn't require explanation. You don't seek reassurance. When she tests, you don't rush to prove your love. You stay calm. Trust that your presence is enough. And if it's not, you're willing to lose her rather than lose yourself. That's the integration, the place where most men fail. Because integration requires holding two truths at once. You care deeply, and you're willing to walk away. You want her, and you don't need her. You're invested, and you're unmoved. That paradox is the hardest thing to embody. Because your wounding tells you it's impossible, that caring means chasing, that love means sacrificing your frame, that connection requires losing yourself. The moment you stop trying to control her investment is the moment you actually have it. Not because you manipulated her, but because you stopped trying to. Not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing. The fatal error isn't chasing, it's thinking that chasing is the solution. That pursuit equals love, that effort equals worth, that the more you sacrifice, the more she'll value you. She doesn't value your sacrifice, she values your self-possession. And the moment you sacrifice your self-possession to keep her, you become valueless. That's the paradox you must accept. The warning, staying cold and distant when she surrenders, isn't mastery. It's cruelty masquerading as strength. Real strength is warm, but unmoved. Present, but not consumed. Connected, but not dependent. If you stay cold, you lose her to your ego. If you break frame, you lose her to your fear. The path forward is neither. It's integration. It's being the man who can hold her warmth without drowning in it, who can stay close without losing himself, who can love without needing. Most men can't. That's why most men lose her the moment they think they've won her. Are you willing to be different? Not just in the way you hold frame during her tests, but in the way you hold frame during her surrender. That's the real test, not whether you can stay unmoved when she's distant, but whether you can stay unmoved when she's close. That's what separates the men who keep her from the men who lose her the moment they start chasing. I'll see you in the next one, the ultimate reward of emotional freedom.